All right. So let's talk for just a few minutes before we get started on what building an offer means within your fractional solution. Because I'll tell you, if you look at what buyers are doing right now, the market changes. It's funny because I had, as you see, there's a topic or the header may say business unusual. During the pandemic, I did a webinar series that happened every Friday that was basically an educational workshop on navigating marketing pivots because of the pandemic. And it was funny, we called it business unusual. And I got to thinking this morning about how, it's like 2020, we had the pandemic. And then 2021, we had our own craziness that's going on. And now 2022, here we are celebrating a year that, part of the country's been at war and we're dealing with crazy economy and everything else. I think that we should almost create something that's called In Search of a New Normal, because there is nothing that's really proved to be consistent and stable in terms of how businesses are navigating and how we're able to serve them. I mean, it seems as if we're having to do a lot of pivots and a lot of shifts. And so that leads me to one of the significant findings that came out of kind of my annual research project that I do every year, where I am assessing and evaluating what professionals have to do in order to serve clients where they are now. And the biggest thing is there was a study that I did, or that I found, that was actually talking about how people are kind of fitting into three camps, with the majority of them being in a group that's called the overwhelmed group. And it's actually like greater than 60% of the population is overwhelmed between the demands that are going on in their own life, the shifts that they've had to navigate through work in order to remain engaged in the workforce or engaged in a new way, and then the challenges of also serving their family, because so many people have either aging parents or children that require their attention, or immediate family or friends that are just requiring care right now that they haven't been able to find elsewhere. So that kind of leads us into what's happening for a lot of people that are trying to find new customers, because it's a case of you may have a full pipeline, but I'd really be curious. And here's what you can do here that's kind of cool with GoToWebinar. So you can give me a show of hands. So what I'd like for you to do, there's a raise your hand feature that's over on the control panel. So give me a show of hands if you're having prospects that are getting stalled out or stuck in your funnel. So, but what that means is if you have met with somebody, you've had conversations that demonstrate that they've got the means, the money, and the motivation to hire you, and they're just not moving forward. If that's happening to you, give me a raise of your hand in the control panel. Because that's what
I don't know
that's
where
one
the
of the big
hand
things that I'm
raiser
seeing.
is.
What was that?
Trouble finding to raise my hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's over on the right-hand side. There's actually, you're an organizer, Mark. You can just raise your hand at me.
Okay. Okay.
What about you, Carlin? Are you finding that people are stalling out?
Yeah, the couple that I've talked to about services, yeah, they're interested, and then they're just kind of, even though I follow up, they're just kind of putting it off. I think they're just kind of waiting to see how things continue to go for their business. And then the rest of them, I haven't even gotten that far. So.
Okay. So where have you gotten to? Have you had first meetings with them?
Only on the two. The others are still just prospects. Haven't even gotten meetings with them.
Were you introduced to them, or are they cold prospects that you've networked?
cold prospect.
Okay. Okay. All right. And that's typical. Mark, you're getting a lot of yours that are referred to you. What's happening?
I basically have to be a little more patient. Probably maybe twice as long to close something. It can matter of weeks, but still, there's more time. I'll have to make more contacts with them. I'll have to, send them additional information, and it's not like, Tony, and it used to be, Tony recommended you. Where do I sign? Now it's Tony recommended you. Let's meet. So
Yep.
it's a little different.
Yeah.
So,
And
that
then
makes
they
sense.
may struggle to figure out where to start. And I know with you, I'm actually planning on using you as an example because yours kind of has a natural progression. But what we may want to think about is there's elements of business development that you kind of approach it like process improvement. Okay. So who all here is familiar with lean? Manufacturing process improvement. Yeah, I think a lot of folks are very familiar with that concept. Well, one of the stages of process improvement is, of course, looking at what are the steps to get to a process. You're mapping out the entire process, and then you look for steps that you can reduce or eliminate in order to make it more efficient. Well, the problem with business development is if you do that right now, oftentimes you may reduce or eliminate a necessary step that your prospects need to be mentally or emotionally ready to hire you. So for instance, with Mark's solution, there is a definite emotional readiness component. Just like with mine, you've got to be ready to make some moves in your life and in your business in order to really capitalize on what our solution brings to the table. So with that, you have to look at every step of your current business development process and recognize what has value and maybe what are some of the steps that you aren't doing well, or perhaps you need to add a step. And now today, what I'm going to be talking about is actually adding a step to your business development process. So right now, knowing that today's buyers are they're slammed with everything that's coming at them and they can't breathe. They don't know where to turn. We went from supply chain issues we went from, not being able to get toilet paper, that kind of fit under supply chain issues, to now, how much does it cost to buy a dozen eggs? Chat that in where you're at right now. And the chat bar is it's the questions pane on your control panel. So type into the questions pane how much it is to buy a dozen eggs right now, where you're at. So Mark Green, I don't know if you've been shopping for eggs in Brazil. It would be interesting to know that. So Mark Green gets the prize for calling in from the farthest today. He's calling in from Brazil. Lucky Mark. So, okay. So knowing, and I'll give everybody a second to type that in. So how much does it cost for a dozen eggs?
I don't know.
Nobody's been complaining about it at your house, Carlin?
They have been, but I don't look at the grocery bill because my son's been going to the store for us lately. So.
Ooh, you're blessed. Okay, so we went from having a dozen eggs, like my neighbor down the street actually would bring us like 5 dozen eggs every week. And then they've had issues with their production of their hens because they've got critters stealing the eggs. So we had to go shopping. And let me tell you, I had a little bit of sticker shock when I went to the grocery store. And up here at my little neighborhood market, it was $7 for a dozen eggs.
Wow.
So it used to be less than $2. And for the 18 pack at, I think it was Sam's Club, it was almost $10. So things like that are impacting everybody. And our buyers are just sitting here not knowing what to do, where to turn, or how they're going to navigate these challenges. Because between inflation and the uncertainty and not being able to get employees, they're having a really hard time. So what we have to do is we have to think about how we make it completely obvious that we can help them get through their current challenges, and we can be their trusted advisor to support them during the next challenges that are coming up. So that is what an offer is designed to do. It is designed to be a step in the buyer journey. And the buyer journey is that term for the relationship between when the prospect is first aware of you and engages in conversations to when they become a client of yours. And I actually like to take the buyer journey even a little bit farther into, I look at that onboarding of a relationship as an entire year that they're working with me, and then even beyond. So that buyer journey, you have to think about it as, it's kind of like a road trip that someone's going to make with you. So if you think about planning a road trip, so Mark Blackton is hanging out at a Starbucks in Junction City right now, and he probably had to do just a little bit of planning to hit the road and make it to Denver. And now along the way, I would imagine that at some point between here and Colorado, he discovered there was road construction, potentially an accident, something that you had to either adjust your route or do something just a little bit different. Is that fair? Okay. So that's the same thing that's happening with our buyers today. So what you want to think about is, what are the obstacles that happen? And when I'm talking about the obstacles, let's think about it from the perspective of finding budget to work with you, maybe one obstacle. Having the bandwidth or time in order to support you. Having the attention or ability in order to make this a priority and focus. So all of these things are potential obstacles that are stopping your prospect from moving forward. So what I'd like for you to do is the purpose, the very first thing we're going to fill in on our worksheet, and it's a Word document because this needs to be a living document for you. So I would like for you to type in what the purpose is of your offer. So if you think about, again, it's obstacles. So what are your prospects getting stuck with right now? So Carlin, what are you hearing from people? What's the reason why they're not moving forward and working with you?
The economy, their growth issues, just viewing this as another additional expense outlay instead of an investment to help them.
Okay. Okay. So then what you may want to think about as a as an entry offer, so then you think about the purpose is creating budget to fund what you do. So let me give you just a really quick example. What I do for my customers on the sales side, because one of the first things that I'm able to do is I can typically justify and make back at least their investment in me within 60 days of them hiring me. As in, they write me a check, within 60 days, they're going to recoup at least their initial investment. That's kind of my typical ROI. And within 90 days, my track record is I return a 10-to-1 ROI. And it's oftentimes anywhere from 10 to 20 to 1 return on effort, or ROE. So I have the benefit of knowing this because I've worked with hundreds of professionals over, 20 years now. So I've got tons of social proof. Now, in the beginning stages, I didn't have that. So if you're getting scrappy, what you have to think about is a way that you can have a discovery conversation with your prospect where they can map through and identify from their own financials something you can help them with that is immediately going to pay for their initial engagement with you. So our goal is we have to create a very quick win. You with me?
Yep.
Okay, so then what you want to think about when it comes to creating a quick win is think about when you start working with a client, what is one of the very first steps that you take in order to really get your arms around what that engagement is going to look like?
First steps is to talk with the client, get a quick understanding of their business and identify what they hope to achieve and benefits that I can provide.
Okay.
Or are you looking for something past that?
I keep going. So then what happens after that initial conversation?
So then present a, the only word I can think of is an evaluation assessment to go through there and identify, like you said, say, I can do an assessment for X amount of dollars for a few days to help identify some areas that will show you the benefits that I can provide for you. And then map out a plan with them to then proceed step by step as to which ones to look at going forward, et cetera. Get their buy-in and begin to move forward.
Okay, so do you have any calculators or budget worksheets as a part of your initial conversations with your client?
No, I don't. That's a good point. I should.
What about you, Mark Blackton?
Well, I was listening to Carlin's answer, which was great, but it's too technical from my perspective for my business. I have to find out what's really bothering them, what their real emotional hot button is versus their technical problems. And if I can get to their emotional hot button, I will close them very quickly.
So what do you often find, though, is the emotional hot button, and how do you discover it?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question, too, because everybody's a little different. Generally, it's in the first one of the first two meetings I'll have with them. And I can only give you examples. I have one client that the wife wants to retire, who is the primary business owner, wants to retire in 2 years.
Okay.
And so I had to figure out what that meant. Does she want to sell her business in 2 years and still work for another 10? What was pulling her out of her business? And I do that through just being aware of, and asking enough questions to get that done. Have her client had two brothers. One wanted to sell, one didn't. It took me 3 years to be able to sell their business because I had to get them in alignment. I didn't make a whole lot of money during those 3 years, but I did make enough relationship where I could meet with them occasionally, bring them information, continue to educate them on what it would look like to sell their business and what it would look like.
So just throwing in an idea here for you, Mark, what you may consider is if it's understanding that alignment and creating that alignment, what may be a very valuable exercise for you to do is some sort of a worksheet or a guide on difficult conversations. It's kind of like we work with an estate planning attorney, Mark and I do, that her business is helping that family navigate through succession planning. And so what she's doing is she is creating an initial conversation that's where she brings the entire family together to talk through that alignment process so that, you know, kids are clear on their timeline to step in. Parents are clear on when it's time for them to make the move out, stay out of the way. And parents are also comfortable with the legacy being defended and protected by the next generation. So, you know, that's the thing that you think about is if there's something that gets people stuck, that's what you want to identify for your quick win. And those are great examples. Thank you, Mark and Carlin.
It's not just the ROI was my whole point, because once they understand the problems that they're running into, if they don't have a plan, the money becomes secondary, and you're not working for minimum wage anymore. You know?
Well, exactly. And then if you have a solution that's similar to what we do with Freeway to Fractional, the investment is insignificant compared to the amount of effort that has to be put in. So then it becomes all about the time and the work that you have to justify as the investment, and it's not about the money. One way or another, though, there's an investment that has to be made.
Right.
So thanks for playing, Mark. I appreciate it. Those are great examples. So, okay. So what I'd like for you to think about then is I want you to identify kind of in your own process, what is that obstacle or approach that's getting in the way and stopping people? And then just like we did with Carlin and Mark, I want you to brainstorm through, don't you love my grandfather clock? My grandfather actually made that. You want to brainstorm through and think of what are some of the possibilities that you could introduce that would help your prospect kind of make that mental leap. The other thing that happens is there is a psychological trigger in the buyer journey that takes place. And it's when that prospect makes the decision that they trust you and they are willing to follow your advice and they want to work with you. So at that point, that's when you need something that if there's something that stops them, there's a concept that's called the invisible bridge. It's between when they identify that there is something that is a problem and the invisible bridge covers that fear, doubt, uncertainty, overwhelm, whatever it is that's stopping them from hiring you. So your offer is designed to cover that invisible bridge. And now it's important also right now, and this is again just one of those little changes that have happened in the past probably 6 to 12 months, is your buyer needs to actually make an investment. You need to get to first dollar. Because once you've gotten to that first dollar, then the prospect is going to be a lot more excited about spending more money with you. So studies have shown over and over that once somebody becomes a client, they are 5 times more likely to buy again from you. So you need to get to revenue earlier with your opportunities and think about it with something. Your offer doesn't have to be something big. So Carlin gave the example of doing an initial assessment where he spends time with his client and actually may, I would imagine, go through some financial information, look at something about their current organizational structure, something that's going to help them with just getting their thoughts just correlated along, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, so he can move forward. Now, when you do this, though, I'm gonna caution you on something. And I think everybody that's on the call, just about everybody that's here is kind of in the fractional CFO space. So I would imagine you're very logical and analytical and linear in your thinking. And your challenge is going to be you want to sell logically, but people make decisions emotionally, to Mark Blackton's point. So you have to recognize that it's not about the money, it's about the confidence and knowing that they can move forward with you and trust that you're going to be able to address their needs. So that's more of what has to happen. So as you're thinking about constructing your offer, that's what I want you really thinking about. It's more about overcoming the fears, insecurities, all that other stuff that gets in the way of somebody feeling ready to do business with you. So, okay. So then I want you to think about a quick win that you can deliver to help your prospects recognize your value. So one of the things that I discovered early on in working with my clients, I work with professionals that tend to make anywhere from $200 to $1,000 an hour. Those are kind of my typical clients. So the thing that I discovered is if I could make a quick win and show them how I could improve their profitability per client, then that would oftentimes get them comfortable in saying, all right, I'm in. So I had a quick win that I delivered of it was an exercise that helped them basically profile their prospects and recognize where the 80-20 fit into their relationship base. You know, the rule of 80-20 is 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your relationships. You probably have all seen it on client reports. I mean, that's just the typical organization. Well, I showed them how they could focus their attention and efforts on only that 20% and predictably arrive at that number. And one of my superpowers is my clients are typically going to experience anywhere from a 30 to 50% growth in their average client size within 3 to 6 months. So again, I just go back to the one area, quick win, something I can demonstrate so that I can get to the harder stuff later. So think about it with what you're doing. So then it goes back to target audience. I gave you an example. Mine is professionals that are making $200 to $1,000 an hour. And what they're specifically trying to do, you've got to describe when you're describing your target audience, you also have to describe what their problem is that they're getting stuck with, okay, and why they need you. And then if there's something about the decision maker or title. And then you'll notice on the opening the door for them to work with you. So if everybody that's on the call today is kind of in that fractional CFO space, makes it a little bit easier for us to kind of narrow our conversation. So in a lot of cases, there may be an event that opens the door for you. So in Mark Blackton's case, oftentimes it's a family member that has either become ill or has had a life event that now all of a sudden the business owner is saying, I need to focus my attention somewhere else beside my business. Or it could be a life event where they end up sick or they pass away, they die, and the business is not, it doesn't have a leadership or succession plan. So that's a description of the event. Mark's is a little bit easier to define based on the fact that he's in the M&A space. It really helps if you define what that event is. So what may be happening is they may have a CFO that's retiring. They may have that stage of growth piece. So Carlin, I know one of your areas of expertise is going for investment capital and helping them prepare to talk to and present to investors, make the pitch deck, create that financial picture of what the opportunity is within the business. So that is a stage of growth that opens the door for you. The shift within employees, they may have an example, they may have somebody that is a CFO that has the title that's incapable of participating in developing the strategy and tying the strategy to financial performance or dashboards or metrics. Or perhaps they need to hire. Maybe they need to increase their staff, or they need to pay their employees more, and they have to justify how those numbers are going to work. I'm throwing out some different examples here for you, but you need to define what is opening the door for you right now. And then once you define that, then we start talking about the pain points. So this is what's happening within their organization. So for example, if we go back with the funding side, so they need investment capital. What are they trying to do? Why do they need the investment capital? And then you've got to dive in and go deep enough that you really get to their real reason for wanting the money. And it's typically 3 to 5 questions in there that you're going to have to dive into. Are y'all still with me? Okay. I did warn you that we were going to be working on this, right? Okay. So then as you're defining this, you then move into the benefits of transformation. So this is where you have to describe the transformation in a way that they see themselves. So what I would give as an example is during the workshop that I presented, where I would be describing that improving your prospect profile, I would give the example of, does it ever feel like when you see somebody that pops up on your cell phone and you look at their picture or contact info, you get a sick feeling in the pit of your stomach that says, I don't want to take this call. I really don't want to talk to this person. This is my least favorite person in the world to talk to. They're going to complain. They've bellyached about my bill the last 3 times I hired them. I mean, I describe this profile and how these people feel when that person calls. And it's so much so you literally see the body language of your prospect transform as they picture who that person is in their client base. And then I talk about, now imagine if it's your favorite client that's calling. And you see their face and you know that they're calling you with good news because they take your advice, they follow it, they do the work, they achieve amazing, extraordinary results, and they tell all their friends. And when they're calling you, they're normally calling because they have someone they want to introduce you to, or they've got another project they want you to work on. Now, what happens if instead of you getting called by that first person, you're consistently called by the second? What does your day look like, and what does your day feel like? So that is an example of where they see the benefits of the transformation. They see themselves on the other side, and they can feel it, they can taste it, they can touch it, they can wrap their arms around it, and they want it. Okay? And the even better part of it is every time that crummy customer calls them, they're going to be thinking of me. So I have something that I've tethered it to, and they're going to say, I need to get away from that. And if I want to get away from that, this is the person that can help me do that. Okay? So then when you think about it, it goes into what can you offer that's going to help them recognize the benefits of transformation. And let me skip ahead, because what I actually want to get to is I want to do some brainstorming with you so that you can leave here with just a couple of ideas that you may incorporate into your own offer, how you're going to develop it. Now, the first one that I want to throw out and talk to you before I dive into this, does anybody have any questions so far? Go ahead and chime in on the questions pane if you have any questions before I start talking about some of the different structures that your offer can take. Anybody got anything? Are you with me? Still good? Well, I'm either doing a really good job or everybody's over surfing on Facebook. Maybe watching game highlights. Okay, so let me talk to you about some of the different structures that professionals have made as far as how they've created their offer. So the first one I want to talk about is a strategy session. So what a strategy session would look like is if you were to book time with your client and their executive team to do some brainstorming about what are all of the opportunities in front of them that they're just not quite sure they're going to be able to pull off without some pretty significant help. So how one of my clients does this, she is an attorney, and her area of expertise, she used to be in-house counsel for one of our local Fortune 100s. And so what she would do is she would create a strategy session that lasted an entire day. She would meet with the entire executive team and she would walk through, in order, she'd talk about acquisitions that they were planning on or that they anticipated being a part of. She would talk about any, like the acquisitions, it was not only business entities, it was real estate, it was talent acquisitions, it was vendor relationships, everything that was going to be coming into the organization that was an addition. And then she'd make a list. So she understood what were the customers that they were pursuing right now? What did they look like? What were the markets that they wanted to go into? What was the IP that they were developing? So she had a very, it was a very broad list of everything that the organization wanted to do. And then she started talking through their challenges. So then she went into their current customers and what were the collection problems? What were some of the employee challenges? What were some of the gaps that they knew were present in managing their people? What were the cultural issues? So by the time she finished this great big long list, she had this massive list of everything that the company needed to do. Now, of course, they want to do it all yesterday, but they only have so much budget. So then from gathering all this information, she then organized it into a proposed timeline based on what the CEO had given her in terms of his or her wish list. And then she came back and delivered a kickoff session where she brainstormed through, and it was normally like a 2-week to 30-day time period between day 1 of the strategy session and day 2. And then she proposed the timeline and the task list. And then she organized everybody into, it was a project management software similar to Trello, where everybody's tasks were assigned in there. And then she managed it and she sold the fractional solution of supporting the integration of that entire 12-month plan. Now before, in many cases, you would think, okay, well, that's just doing a proposal. And now what you want to do is you want to get to first dollar. So she charges $10,000 to do that initial development of the scope of work because she's going to come out of it with all of the different objectives, issues, challenges. This is your framework. These are your potential things that the potential landmines or opportunities that, you may get sued if you don't think about this. That's what she put in there. So it was a risk assessment. Does that make sense? So that's what a strategy session looks like. And that is an example with an attorney. And again, she charges $10,000 for it. So now The next one I want to throw out there and give you some insight about is an assessment. Now, with assessments, there are several different ways you can do this. You can find technology platforms that allow you to actually build your own assessment. I actually have a client that created an assessment that basically does employee survey, customer survey, vendor survey, and leadership survey on 42 questions, pulls all the information together and creates an assessment of how effective they are as a strategic organization. And it gives coaching priorities based on how bad things are in different areas. So that one is pretty cool. There's another one. Mark, can you share a little bit about what you do with core values?
I haven't been, I've used this in the past. I sort of let this fall off, but I do like it. It's literally core values is a 2 survey process. The first one is about 25 questions, and it works through a algorithm, and it's sort of like it provides a summary of where a business stands in 18 critical areas, and it prioritizes and attempts to put an equity value improvement on each of these areas, so that you can say, look, if you could improve your contracting value, your business value by $500,000 by fixing your contracts, wouldn't it be worth spending $50,000 to $100,000 to get this right? So it allows you to do that. And then you can do that for free. They can actually just go through that and really quickly just answer these questions. The sales part, or the real simple get to first dollar, is for like $2,500, is a much deeper process where you sit down and walk through this assessment with them. It's still not that many questions, but at the end of that, you have a very nice report that shows them where they have weaknesses in their business and what they should improve and what they could work on. And that, I like that because it allows me to bring in CFOs or attorney friends or whatever, because it's not always things that I want to fix or that I do fix. So
Right.
it broadens my ability to help them.
So, and core values is an actual license that you can acquire to use
Yes.
that assessment, isn't it?
It's about a $5,000 a year product
Yeah. So,
to
I
have
mean,
access to it.
they're not inexpensive when you get one that is very well done. But my client and friend that did the one that looks at, it's the 42 questions, that assessment has cost her over $100,000 to create the entire mechanism for it. But she's pursuing multi-million-dollar consulting engagements with her assessment. So for her, it was definitely worth that initial investment. And now she's actually pursuing licensing for others to be able to use the assessment now.
Well, I'm retooling my business a little bit, and I'm going to bring that back. It's just I have not been selling it, so it didn't make sense to keep spending the money for it. But I'm
Well,
going back
the thing is it's one of those cases that if you're going to do something like the core values, then you need to have kind of a number in your head of how much you need to make in order to justify that ongoing investment. So if it's $5,000 a year, you probably should bring in at least $100,000 to $200,000 worth of business at minimum based on it in order to justify that investment.
Right. Exactly. You have to be actively promoting that marketing process.
Yes, and you need to have multiple people every month through it for you to have the ongoing investment and the effort in marketing it.
And of course, they sell it because they say, well, look, all you have to do is sell 2 of these and you pay for it for the year.
Yeah, but that is a dangerous belief, Just one or two clients pays for it because it doesn't.
Well, it's really interesting because all these people that sell assessments sell them that way, and then they also provide a lot of content, right, to help you
Yep.
sell. And they make it sound like they're going to do this for you, and that is not true. You are
No.
going to have to put this into your process and actively use that process in your overall business model to
Right.
justify the cost.
And just like you evaluate, so there's the contribution margin that you factor in before you hire an employee. You have to go through that exact same exercise with investments you make in your business and assess whether or not you have significant enough ROI now and ongoing to justify that spend. So that's one thing when you're thinking about an assessment as a part of it. They're a very powerful tool, but to Mark's point, it needs to be something that you actively promote, and you need to, have regular people every month that are taking core values and paying you $2,500 every time through it. So, but we gave the example there so that you get an idea of what it is, what it looks like, what the structure is. The next one, and this is actually one of my personal favorites, is a workshop. And now workshops are, Mark's laughing because he has sat through so many of mine. I like creating workshops, not only because it allows me to do only the work that I love to do and create a process to do the repetitive tasks. So for example, in my referral prospecting class, I have had hundreds of people who have gone through it, but I haven't delivered it hundreds of times because I've created the content that people can engage, listen to the recordings that are the repetitive piece, and then they come into group coaching sessions or one-on-one coaching sessions, and I can do the strategy work, which is what my superpower is. And it's the work that I love doing. It's what excites me about the project, not doing the exact same explanation over and over and over. Now, the other thing that you think about is the workshop. So for instance, Mark does a workshop that's called Fix It or Flip It, where he works with business owners on assessing their current business and determining whether or not they should focus on fixing the things, cleaning it up, fixing the curb appeal, or whether or not they just want to sell it. And he walks them through that process. That would be something that you could create a workshop around. So there's a local fractional CFO group that has done incredibly well because they've partnered with a bank, and they created a series of workshops for the bank clients to get everybody kind of on the same level playing field about what are financials, creating dashboards, what are the KPIs that matter in running your organization. And now they've delivered those for free to the bank clients, but what you could think about doing is actually creating something that they would pay for. They don't have to pay a lot for it, but that just paying something gets them to that first dollar. Or the other thing you can do is create a guide or a workbook and have an e-commerce landing page on your website. And these are super easy to build out, where somebody can go to your website and download a budget worksheet that they pay $9.97 for. And through that, they have the opportunity to basically prepare for that initial conversation with you. But by getting to first dollar, you are 5 times more likely to actually turn them into a client during your conversations than if they don't do it. So are y'all with me? So workshops are fantastic. And you can actually create workshops. This model of creating digital courses and hybrid digital courses is a beautiful thing. I mean, it's gone from being, a 80 to $100 million a year industry to it's in the billions of dollars now. And with the shift in the pandemic, you can find online workshops on everything from training your dog to supporting your kids while they homeschool to selling your business. There's actually a guy in the UK that's created a workshop that teaches people how to prepare their business to sell. And then all of those additional opportunities that come in that have done the work to prepare their businesses to sell, he can then help them with brokering the deals. He does this in the UK. I think Mark's kicking around doing something similar for his clients here in the US. So, but the biggest thing is it does a lot of the heavy lifting of your client work that allows you to spend less time and improve the outcome with the client. So we've got workshops, and then the strategy session or the kickoff session was the final one that I want to throw out there, and then I want to have just a few minutes for questions. So what the kickoff session looks like is if there is an onboarding process that you have with your clients where you prepare them for you to come in and do that work. So for example, if you're a fractional CFO, it's when you would come in and you would work with every individual that's on the leadership team on understanding perhaps their value or their per employee return on their investment. So how do we know our employees are making money? How do we create, financial metrics that matter? If you're pulling everybody together to get them on the same page, you can deliver that in a kickoff session. Okay, so there's a few options for you to consider. Now, let's talk about questions that you have about which one is right for you. What immediately jumps out at you and says, ooh, I want to do more of that one? Anyone? I've got the peanut gallery that's contributing here on my end. All right, I'm going to try to unmute. So, Christopher, I've tried unmuting you. Jennifer, good to have you with us. I think you're unmuted as well. If you want to chime in and ask any questions, there's my chimer telling me that I'm at time now too. So I want to be respectful of your time. Okay, so questions, comments. Mark Green, do I still have you with me? Carlin, what about you? Have you thought of some ideas for your offer?
Well, for me, I think I want to continue focusing more on doing assessments, and then getting, as part of that, then leading into, I think it naturally flows into strategy sessions as part of that later on. So that's kind of my flow, is doing that and leading into specific workshops possibly once certain areas are identified that would impact like a department or multiple groups of people within a company, which then I could, after doing that, could refine to do as a standalone presentation workshop.
Perfect. Yeah, and with workshops, it's really a lot of fun if you can figure out how you can build it once and then deliver it to many.
Yeah.
So, and that's something that your partner has done an amazing job of. So talk to Mike about what he's done with Enterprise University and think of how you can construct content and deliver those via webinars, much like we're doing here today.
Okay.
Because that's a fantastic place to start. Okay, other questions? Uh-oh. Okay. Well, Mark, I will tell you, so Mark Green, I know, is having issues with audio. You're going to get a copy of the recording. So once we edit it and clean some of the stuff up in it, I'll share the recording with everybody that attends today. And then I would encourage you, when you complete this worksheet and put together what your offer might look like, feel free to shoot it over my way, and I'm happy to brainstorm with you on marketing it and filling the room, because I know that's when the work really happens is once you've built it, it's not like the field of dreams. You don't build it and they will come. You build it around your prospects based on them saying, yes, I would pay for that. And then from there, you then have your social proof where they talk about, I paid for it, I found value in it, and they tell all of their friends. So, okay. So did everybody get some ideas?
Yes.
I am hopeful. Okay, excellent. All right. Well, Mark, can you think of anything that we haven't covered?
Oh, there you go. I'm unmuting. I hit the button 5 times. Sorry. No, I think it's good. I think that just to summarize, you're going to meet people, either meet them, get a referral, or you're going to advertise or somehow. And the sooner you can get people into maybe an inexpensive offer or a small evaluation, or for me, evaluation of business valuation, the sooner you can do that, and through that whole process, you're building relationship and trust, and that'll take you into a consulting project, and then from the consulting project, it should take you to a fractional relationship with these people. So think about this whole continuum from meeting to having the type of relationship where you're part of uh, their leadership team after a few months of working with them. So it's keep the eye on the ball, the referral or the fractional leadership role versus these small consulting projects. They could be big consulting projects, but from my perspective, it's all about becoming part of their leadership team.
And that's the point of your offer. The offer needs to keep in mind that you are going somewhere. And this is the pit stop along the way that helps somebody prepare for that longer journey that they're going to take with you.
It's multiple steps. You're going to do an evaluation for so much money. You're going to identify some work, whether you do it or not. You're going to manage it. Could be a consulting project, but all those steps build to a long-term relationship.
Exactly. So, and if you have found value in our conversation today, this is one component of the workshop that Mark Blackton and I teach that's called Freeway to Fractional. And we are currently gathering up our next group. Carlin's in our group right now. Mark Green's in our group right now. So we've got folks here that can share their experience in going through it. And then we are also delighted to let you know that Jeff Peterson is going to be doing another one of these next Tuesday, isn't he? That's a stop by my office.
Yes, Jeff and I are going to co-sponsor a stop by my office next week. And it's really, the main topic is, and it'll be a conversation, is what is a fractional CFO?
Excellent.
Get into that particular item deep in a deep way next Tuesday. So sign up for that.
Excellent. You just cut out, Mark.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So you should be seeing that notification come across on the FANG newsletter. And then if you have interest, I'll also be including you in an invitation. Mark and I are doing a 5-day challenge. It's basically, well, it's a 5-day boot camp on 5 days to fractional that walk you through the steps of getting to your first fractional opportunity. We help you with envisioning your expertise, put together in a fractional solution, how you're going to sell it, how you're going to price it, what your life needs to look like, kind of the mindset shifts you have to that are going to have to happen for you. That's going to be a part of our 5 days. So, and that will be coming up soon. We'll be sure and share information with you as well. Would love to have you participate. All right. Hopefully this has been a beneficial conversation for everybody who logged in. Thank you very much for your time today. And remember, you can get anything you want in the world as long as you help enough other people get what they want. Have a great day, and I wish everyone here good selling.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.